Now you look as cheap as you really are. The words hung in the air as cold liquid soaked through my silk blouse. Red wine. Expensive red wine that my niece Brooklyn had just thrown directly at my chest. We were standing in the middle of Marcello's, one of the most exclusive restaurants in Manhattan, surrounded by 50 of my closest friends and family. It was my 35th birthday dinner, a celebration I'd been planning for months, and my 17-year-old niece had just humiliated me in front of everyone. My name is Catherine Wells, and that moment, standing there dripping with wine while Brooklyn smirked at me, changed everything. Not just because of what she did, but because of what happened after, because of what everyone else did, or more accurately, what they didn't do. Let me back up. I need you to understand how we got here, how a family dinner turned into a public humiliation that would ultimately cost my sister everything she thought she had. I'm the older sister. Always have been. My sister Victoria is 3 years younger than me, and from the moment she was born, she was the golden child. The pretty one, the charming one, the one who could do no wrong. I was the responsible one, the boring one, the one who worked hard while Victoria glided through life on her looks and personality. Our parents adored her, still do. When we were kids, Victoria got the bigger bedroom, the nicer clothes, the more expensive birthday parties. I got lectures about being grateful and not asking for too much. When I was 16 and wanted to go to art school, my parents said we couldn't afford it. When Victoria was 16, they bought her a car, a brand new car, for her birthday. I'd been driving our mother's old station wagon. The inequality was so blatant, so constant, that I stopped noticing it after a while. Or maybe I just stopped fighting it. It was easier to accept that this was how our family worked. Victoria was special. I was not. I went to state school on scholarships and loans, worked 2 jobs to pay rent, graduated with a degree in marketing, and got a job at a small firm making $32,000 a year. I worked my way up, slowly, painfully. Every promotion was earned through late nights and weekends. Every raise was negotiated after months of building my case. By the time I was 30, I was making 6 figures as a senior marketing director. By 33, I'd been headhunted by a major corporation and was making $220,000 as their VP of marketing. I'd bought a condo in a good neighborhood, I drove a nice car, I wore designer clothes. I'd earned every single thing I had. Victoria, meanwhile, had married rich at 23. Her husband Gregory came from old money, real old money. His family owned half of Connecticut. Victoria never worked a day after the wedding. She didn't need to. She spent her days shopping, getting spa treatments, having lunch with other wealthy wives. She had a personal trainer, a chef, a housekeeper. She lived in a mansion in Greenwich. She wore clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. And she had Brooklyn, her only child, born when Victoria was 24. Brooklyn had been raised with every advantage imaginable. Private schools, expensive tutors, designer everything. She'd never heard the word no in her entire life. By the time she was 17, Brooklyn was exactly what you'd expect. Entitled, spoiled, mean. She treated service workers like garbage. She talked down to anyone she perceived as beneath her. And she'd been taught, whether intentionally or not, that I was beneath her. Because despite my success, despite my 6-figure salary and my nice condo and my designer wardrobe, I would never be as good as them. I hadn't married money. I'd earned my own. And in Victoria's world, that made me inferior. New money, working class trying to play dress up. She never said it directly. She was too smart for that. But the implication was always there. In the way she'd compliment my outfit and then mention it wasn't quite right for the occasion. In the way she'd invite me to events and then seat me at the table furthest from the important people. In the way she'd introduce me as her sister who works in marketing, emphasis on works, like it was something vaguely embarrassing. Brooklyn had learned from her mother. By the time she was a teenager, she'd perfected the art of the subtle put-down. She'd compliment my shoes and then mention they were last season. She'd admire my purse and then note that the hardware was slightly wrong, wasn't it? She'd smile sweetly while making me feel small. And my family let it happen, encouraged it even. Because in their eyes, Victoria and Brooklyn were the success story, the proof that beauty and connections mattered more than hard work. And I was the cautionary tale, the one who had to struggle because I wasn't special enough to avoid it. So when I turned 35, I decided to do something different. I decided to celebrate myself, to throw a party that showed everyone exactly how far I'd come. I rented out a private room at Marcello's, one of the most exclusive Italian restaurants in the Seed, the kind of place where reservations are booked 6 months out and entrees start at $75. I invited 50 people, friends from work, friends from college, a few family members. I bought a new outfit specifically for the occasion, a silk blouse in deep emerald green, tailored pants, heels that cost more than my first month's rent in college. I looked good, really good. I felt powerful, successful, ready to celebrate everything I'd accomplished. Victoria and Gregory RSVP'd yes, along with Brooklyn. My parents were coming, my younger brother Nathan and his wife. It was going to be a good night. Or so I thought. The dinner started well. People arrived, complimented the venue, the decorations, the ambiance. I had arranged for a multi-course tasting menu, wine pairings, everything was perfect. My friends were having a great time, my coworkers were impressed, even my parents seemed to be enjoying themselves. Victoria arrived fashionably late, of course, making an entrance in a dress that probably cost $5,000. Gregory was in a custom suit. Brooklyn wore something designer that showed way too much for a 17-year-old, but no one would tell her that. They found their seats at the family table. I'd seated them with my parents, Nathan, and a few cousins. Not at my table with my closest friends, but close enough to be included. The first course came, then the second. Conversation flowed. Wine was poured. I was making my rounds, talking to different tables, thanking people for coming. I stopped by the family table to say hello. My mother complimented the venue. My father asked about work. Victoria smiled and said everything was lovely, though I caught her whispering to Brooklyn about something. Brooklyn was on her phone, barely acknowledging anyone. Then came time for the main course. I was back at my table with my closest friends when I saw Brooklyn stand up. She had a glass of red wine in her hand. Odd, since she was 17 and technically shouldn't be drinking, but no one at her table seemed to care. She walked towards me. I thought maybe she was coming to wish me happy birthday. Maybe Victoria had told her to be polite. I smiled at her as she approached. She smiled back. Cold. Calculating. Then, in one swift motion, she raised the glass and threw the entire contents at me. The wine hit me square in the chest, soaked through my silk blouse, dripped down to my pants, splashed onto my shoes. The entire restaurant went silent. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned to look at. And Brooklyn, standing there with an empty glass, said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Now you look as cheap as you really are." I stood there, frozen, wine dripping off me, staring at my 17-year-old niece who just humiliated me at my own birthday dinner, in front of 50 people. The silence stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then the whispers started, gasps, murmurs of shock. My friends at my table stood up, asking if I was okay. Someone handed me napkins, but I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at Victoria, at Gregory, at my parents, waiting for them to say something, to do something, to discipline Brooklyn for what she'd just done. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth, but she wasn't moving, wasn't standing up, wasn't coming over to apologize or control her daughter. Gregory looked uncomfortable, but stayed seated. My mother's face was pinched with something that looked more like annoyance than anger. And Brooklyn was smiling, proud of herself. She turned and walked back to her table, set down the empty glass, picked up her purse and said to her mother, "Can we leave now? This is boring."
Victoria stood up. She actually stood up. And for a moment, I thought she was going to come apologize, to address what had just happened. But instead, she said, "We should probably go. This is awkward." And they left, all three of them. Victoria, Gregory, and Brooklyn walked out of the restaurant while I stood there dripping with wine. My parents looked at each other, then at me. My mother said, "You should probably go change, dear. Maybe cut the evening short. It's a bit uncomfortable now." Cut the evening short. My birthday dinner that I'd planned and paid for because my niece had assaulted me and my family's response was that it was uncomfortable. I felt something crack inside me. Not break, crack, like a fault line opening up. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, looked down at my ruined outfit. The silk was destroyed. The wine had stained everything. My expensive clothes were garbage now. And I started to laugh. Not a happy laugh, a slightly unhinged laugh of someone who just realized how truly done they were with pretending everything was fine. I cleaned myself up as best I could. The blouse was unwearable. I took it off and put on the blazer I'd had draped over my chair. Went back out to the dining room. My friends were there, looking concerned. My coworkers were confused. My family had all left, every single one of them. My parents, Nathan, the cousins. They'd followed Victoria out, left me alone at my own birthday party. One of my friends, Jessica, came up and hugged me. "Are you okay? What the hell just happened?" "I don't know, but I'm done." Done with what? With pretending I'm part of a family that has never actually wanted me. We finished the dinner. My real friends rallied around me, made toasts, tried to salvage the evening, but it was ruined. Everyone knew it. When the bill came, it was $4,300 for 50 people, multi-course meal, wine pairings, expensive venue. I paid it without blinking. $4,300 for the worst birthday of my life. The next morning, I woke up with a wine hangover and a clarity I'd never had before. I looked at my phone. No messages from Victoria, no apology from Brooklyn, no call from my parents. Nothing. I opened my laptop and started documenting everything. Every instance of favoritism I could remember. Every time I'd been treated as less than. Every dollar I'd given my family over the years when they'd asked for help. And there were a lot of dollars. When Victoria and Gregory had a cash flow problem 3 years ago, I'd lent them $15,000. Never saw it back. When my parents needed help with their mortgage 2 years ago, I'd sent them $10,000. They never paid me back either. When Nathan needed help with his wedding, I'd contributed $5,000. All told, I'd given my family over $40,000 over the years, money they'd asked for, money they'd promised to pay back, money that had disappeared into the void of family obligation. I also documented the work I'd done for Victoria's charity events, the marketing materials I'd designed for free, the contacts I'd connected her with, the hours of unpaid labor, because that's what family does. Except family apparently didn't return the favor. I made a spreadsheet. Detailed, documented, dated. Then I saved it and closed my laptop. I needed to think about what to do next. The answer came faster than I expected. That afternoon, I got a text from my mother. "Your father and I think you overreacted last night. Brooklyn is just a teenager. You embarrassed Victoria by making such a scene. You should apologize." I should apologize for being assaulted at my own birthday dinner, for having wine thrown on me, for existing in a way that somehow inconvenienced Victoria. I read that text 3 times. Then I blocked my mother's number. Then I blocked my father's. Then Victoria's. Then Gregory's. Then Nathan's. I went through my entire family and blocked every single one of them. Phone, email, social media. All of it. If they thought I was the problem, they could have their happy family without me. The next day, I called a family law attorney. Her name was Patricia, and she specialized in estrangement cases. "I need advice on formally distancing myself from my family." "Can you be more specific?" "I need to know my legal rights regarding loans I've made that were never repaid. I need to know how to protect myself financially from future requests. and I need to know if there's any legal recourse for what happened at my birthday dinner." Patricia listened to the whole story. Then she said, "The loans are tricky. If you have written agreements, we can pursue them. If not, it's your word against theirs. As for the birthday incident, technically that's assault. A minor threw a beverage on you intentionally. You could file a police report." "Really?" "Really. It won't result in much since she's a minor, but it creates a legal record, which could be useful if this pattern of behavior continues. Do it. File the report. I want everything documented." Patricia helped me draft a formal letter to my family. It was professional, legal, and clear. It stated that I was ceasing all voluntary contact, that any attempts to reach me would be considered harassment, that I was formally requesting repayment of all outstanding loans, with payment plans available if they needed them, and that any future contact should go through my attorney. We sent it certified mail to everyone: Victoria, Gregory, my parents, Nathan, the cousins. 48 hours later, my phone started ringing from unknown numbers. I didn't answer. Voicemails piled up. I didn't listen. Emails from new addresses appeared. I deleted them unread. But one message got through. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Victoria. You're being insane. Brooklyn was just joking around. You're destroying this family over a teenage prank." I showed the text to Patricia. She added the new number to the harassment documentation. "What about the money they owe me? Can we actually get it back?" "If you have any documentation, we can try. Emails referencing the loans, text messages, bank transfer records, anything." I went through years of records. I found bank transfers with notes like "loan for house emergency" and "helping with cash flow." I found emails where Victoria had asked for money and promised to pay it back. I found texts from my father thanking me for the mortgage help and saying he'd repay me soon. I had everything. Patricia filed formal demand letters, legal documents requesting repayment within 30 days, or we'd pursue collection. The response was immediate. My mother called Patricia's office furious. "How dare Catherine do this to family? We're not some stranger she loaned money to. We're her parents." Patricia's response was perfect. "Then you should honor your commitment to repay her. You have 30 days. 28 days later, I received a check from my parents. $10,000, the full amount they owed me. No note, no apology, just a check. 2 days after that, Nathan sent a check for $5,000, his full amount. The only one who didn't pay was Victoria. Instead, she sent me an email from a new address. "You're really going to destroy our relationship over money after everything our family has been through together?" I didn't respond. Patricia did. Another formal letter, this time noting that failure to repay would result in small claims court action. Victoria's response was to have Gregory's attorney send a threatening letter about family defamation and emotional distress. Patricia laughed when she read it. "They're bluffing. There's no case here. But it tells me they're scared." Good. 3 months after my birthday, I was thriving. I'd gotten a promotion at work, another $50,000 added to my salary. I'd started therapy to process the family trauma I had been carrying for 35 years. I joined a hiking group and made new friends who actually valued me. I'd started dating someone kind and normal who thought my success was attractive, not threatening. My life was genuinely better without my family in it. Then Brooklyn's 18th birthday came around. I knew about it because I still followed Victoria on social media from a fake account, just to keep tabs, just to know what was happening. The party was massive. Country club venue, 300 guests. Victoria had posted about it for weeks. "My daughter's debut into adulthood," she'd written, celebrating the amazing young woman she's become. The photos looked expensive, very expensive. And still, Victoria hadn't paid me back the $15,000 she owed me. But something else caught my attention. Brooklyn had posted something on her public Instagram account, a photo of her at the party, surrounded by friends, with a caption that said, "Turned 18 today and finally got access to my trust fund. Thanks, Grandpa, for making me a millionaire. $2 million waiting for me. Time to live my best life." I stared at that post for a long time. Brooklyn had just inherited $2 million, and Victoria still claimed she couldn't pay me back $15,000. I screenshotted the post and sent it to Patricia. Thoughts? Her response came quickly. Very interesting. This might actually help us. How? If Brooklyn just came into money, and she's now legally an adult, we could argue that the family has the means to repay you, but is choosing not to. It strengthens our case that this is intentional financial exploitation, not inability to pay. Can we do anything with this? We can absolutely use it in court if we need to.
We can absolutely use it in court if we need to, but more importantly, we can use it in negotiation. Sometimes the threat of public legal proceedings is enough to motivate repayment, especially for families like yours who care about appearances. Do it, whatever it takes. Patricia sent one final letter to Victoria. This time, it referenced Brooklyn's public posts about her trust fund inheritance. It noted that the family clearly had access to funds. It gave Victoria 7 days to repay the full $15,000, or we would file in small claims court. The case would be public record. The details would be available to anyone who searched, including all of Victoria's wealthy friends and social contacts. 5 days later, I received a check for $15,000. Again, no note, no apology, just payment. The memo line said, "Final settlement." I deposited immediately. I'd gotten every penny back. $40,000 that my family had owed me. Money I'd given freely when they asked, but that they'd never intended to repay until forced. I felt vindicated, validated, and completely done with all of them. 6 months after my birthday, I was 37 and getting married. Marcus had proposed on a hiking trip in Colorado. It was perfect, simple, just us and the mountains. We planned a small wedding, 50 people, close friends, co-workers, my chosen family. No one from my biological family was invited. Not my parents, not Victoria, not Nathan, despite his apology. I wasn't being cruel, I just didn't want them there. This was my day, and I wanted it filled with people who actually loved me. The wedding was beautiful. Intimate ceremony at a botanical garden, reception at a nice restaurant. Everything I wanted. No drama, no tension, just joy. About a week before the wedding, I got an email from Victoria. Subject line, "Please. Catherine, I know we haven't spoken in 2 years. I know I don't deserve to ask anything of you. But please let me come to your wedding. Let me be there for this. Let me be your sister again. I miss you. Brooklyn has been asking about you. She's in college now and has been reflecting on her behavior. She wants to apologize. We all want to make things right. Please give us a chance." I read it once, then deleted it. I didn't respond. The morning of my wedding, I woke up happy. Genuinely, completely happy. Got ready with my bridesmaids, my best friends who'd been there through everything, had champagne and laughter, and the kind of easy joy that comes from being surrounded by people who love you without conditions. The wedding was beautiful. Intimate ceremony at a botanical garden, reception at a nice restaurant. Everything I wanted. No drama, no tension, just joy. About a week before we went on our hiking trip to Colorado, Marcus and I had been in a bit of a fight. It had started over something silly. I had made a comment about his job, saying he was working too hard, and he had said something about how I was always picking on him. We both ended up feeling hurt. The week before the wedding, I felt like I had suddenly been hit by a busload of insecurities. I wanted to be perfect for Marcus. I wanted our wedding day to be perfect. I wondered if we would be happy, if we would make it. Marcus noticed this in me. He comforted me. He told me he loved me for who I was, and that he didn't care about our wedding day being perfect. He wanted it to be our day. It was our wedding. He said he would there for me, no matter what. At the reception, during the toasts, my best friend Jessica told a story about meeting me 10 years ago, when I was still trying to make my family happy. She said,
I watched Catherine spend years trying to earn love from people who'd already decided she wasn't worth it, and I watched her finally walk away and build a life that actually reflects her worth. This wedding, this marriage, this community of people who adore her, this is what she deserves, and I'm so grateful she finally knows that. Everyone cheered. Marcus squeezed my hand. I looked around at the faces of people who'd chosen to be there, who'd shown up, who'd celebrated me without qualifiers or conditions, and I realized I'd never been happier. 3 years after my birthday, Victoria's life fell apart. I heard about it through Nathan, who'd periodically reached out with family updates. I never responded, but I read his messages. Gregory's family business collapsed. Bad investments, fraud allegations. The details were murky, but the outcome was clear. They lost everything. The mansion was foreclosed, the cars were repossessed, the lifestyle was gone. Victoria had to get a job for the first time in 20 years. She was working retail at a department store, making $12 an hour, living in a small apartment in a bad part of town. Brooklyn had to drop out of her expensive private college and transfer to community college. Her trust fund had been managed by Gregory's family company. When that collapsed, most of her money disappeared. She had enough for school, but not the lifestyle she had expected. My parents sold their house to help Victoria and Gregory, gave them $100,000 to try to stabilize, but it wasn't enough. Nathan told me Mom had asked him if I might be willing to help. Nathan had apparently said, "After what they all did to her, are you insane?" I appreciated that, but I also knew I wouldn't have helped even if they'd asked directly. They'd made their choices, I'd made mine. 4 years after my birthday, I got a letter. Actual mail, handwritten, addressed to me at my home. The return address was Brooklyn's college. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. I opened it. Dear Aunt Catherine, I know I have no right to contact you. I know I don't deserve a response, but I need to say this anyway. I'm sorry. I am incredibly sorry for what I did at your birthday dinner 4 years ago, for throwing that wine on you, for saying what I said, for humiliating you. I was 17 and awful, and I thought I was clever. I wasn't. I was cruel, and I've regretted it every single day since then. The letter went on. 3 pages of apology, of explanation, though not excuse. She talked about how she'd been raised to think money and status were the only things that mattered, how she'd been taught that people who worked were somehow less than, how she'd learned from watching my mother treat me poorly that it was acceptable. She talked about how losing everything had taught her what actually matters, that her mother was miserable now, working a job she hated, bitter about how her life had turned out. She didn't want to become that. She ended with, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a relationship. I just needed you to know that I understand now what I did, and I'm sorry. I will carry that regret forever. I hope you're happy. I hope your life is everything you deserve. Brooklyn. I read it twice. Then I put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. Not because I was still angry, but because I didn't need to. The apology was for her, not for me. I'd already moved on. 5 years after my birthday, Marcus and I bought a house. A beautiful house in a good neighborhood, with a yard and a garden. We talked about kids, about the future, about building a family of our own, one based on respect and love and actual care, not obligation or appearances or conditional acceptance. I'd built a life I was proud of, a career I loved, a marriage that fulfilled me, friendships that sustained me. I didn't think about my birthday dinner anymore. Didn't think about the wine or the humiliation or the family that had failed me. It was just a story I'd told sometimes, a turning point. The moment everything changed. Then one day, I was having lunch at a cafe near my office when I saw her. Victoria. She was wearing a store uniform, name tag pinned to her shirt. She looked tired. older. She was on her lunch break, eating a sandwich alone at a table in the corner. She looked up and saw me. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she stood up, walked over to my table. "Catherine, Victoria, can I sit?" I gestured to the empty chair. She sat down. Awkward silence. "You look good," she finally said. "Thanks. So do you." That was a lie, but what else do you say? "How have you been?" she asked. "Good. Really good. I got married. I heard. Nathan mentioned it. Congratulations." "Thank you. How's Brooklyn?" "She's okay. Working and going to school. Growing up. That's good." More silence. Then Victoria said, "I'm sorry. For everything. For how we treated you. For the birthday dinner. For Brooklyn. For all of it. You deserved so much better." "I know." We sit with that for a moment. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I see it now, how wrong we were, how badly we failed you. Thank you for saying that. Do you think we could ever, maybe, try to have a relationship again, someday?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe. But not now. Not yet. I understand." She stood up, picked up her sandwich. "I really am happy for you, Catherine. I hope you know that." "I do." She walked away, back to her table, back to her lunch break, back to a life that looked nothing like the one she'd expected. And I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no sadness. Just peace. 6 years after my birthday, I was at a work event when someone asked me about my family. It was a casual question. "Do you have siblings?" "Yes, a sister and a brother." "Are you close?" "Not really." "We're estranged." "Oh, I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was the right choice." And I meant it. Being estranged from my family wasn't a tragedy. It was a boundary, a choice I'd made to protect my peace. And I'd never regretted it. Not once. But I should tell you about what happened in between, the years between cutting them off and that moment of complete peace. Because it wasn't instant. Healing never is. In the first year after my birthday, I struggled more than I wanted to admit. I'd wake up sometimes in the middle of the night, replaying that moment. The wine hitting my chest, Brooklyn's smirk, my family walking out. I'd feel the humiliation all over again, hot and sharp. My therapist, Dr. Morrison, yes, same last name as my family, ironic, helped me understand that trauma doesn't care about logic. Even though I knew intellectually that cutting them off was right, my body still carried the wound. We did EMDR therapy. We processed childhood memories I'd buried. Like the time I was 8 and asked for a birthday party like Victoria's. My mother had sighed and said, "Victoria is special, Catherine. You need to understand that." Or the time I was 14 and made honor roll. Straight A's. My father looked at the report card and said, "Good. That's what we expect." Then he took Victoria to get ice cream because she'd passed all her classes. Not excelled, just passed. But that deserved celebration. My A's deserved nothing. Dr. Morrison helped me see the pattern. I'd spent my entire life trying to be good enough, trying to earn a love that was never actually available. Because the problem wasn't me. It never had been. The problem was them. They'd decided early on that Victoria was the golden child and I was the supporting character. And nothing I did was ever going to change that narrative. Understanding that intellectually was one thing. Believing it emotionally was harder. I'd been conditioned for 35 years to think I was the problem, that if I just tried harder, worked harder, achieved more, they'd finally see me. But they never wanted to see me. They wanted me to stay in my assigned role. The second year was when the anger really hit. I'd been so focused on the immediate aftermath, the legal actions, the blocking, the boundary setting, that I hadn't let myself feel the full weight of the rage. But in year 2, it came. I was furious. Furious at my parents for treating me like a second-class child. Furious at Victoria for being so casually cruel. Furious at Brooklyn for thinking she could humiliate me without consequences. Furious at Nathan for being complicit. Furious at myself for tolerating it for so long. Dr. Morrison said anger was healthy, that it meant I was finally valuing myself enough to recognize the injustice. We did rage work. I wrote letters I never sent, screamed into pillows, went to a rage room and smashed plates with Victoria's face taped to them. It felt childish and necessary and healing. Marcus was patient through all of it. He'd come from a functional family, the kind where parents actually loved their kids equally and showed up for things and said, "I'm proud of you," without qualifiers. He couldn't fully understand what I'd been through, but he tried. And more importantly, he never made me feel crazy for feeling what I felt. One night, about 18 months after the birthday disaster, we were having dinner, when I started crying. Just suddenly, without warning, tears streaming down my face. Marcus put down his fork and waited. "I miss having a family," I said. Not them specifically, but the idea of family. The idea that there are people who are supposed to love you no matter what. He reached across the table and took my hand. "You do have family. You have me. You have Jessica and your other friends. You have people who chose you. That's more real than people who happened to share DNA but treated you like garbage." He was right. But it still hurt. There's a grief in accepting that your family of origin is never going to be what you needed them to be. A grief in realizing that the people who were supposed to protect you were actually the ones hurting you. I had to mourn the family I'd wanted, the family I deserved, the family I'd never actually had. Around this time, Nathan started trying harder to reconnect. He'd send texts every few weeks, updates about his life, questions about mine. I didn't block him after his initial apology. I just didn't respond. But he kept trying. 6 months of consistent, gentle outreach. Finally, I agreed to meet him for coffee. Just once. Just to hear what he had to say. We met at a neutral place, a Starbucks halfway between our neighborhoods. He looked nervous when I walked in. I felt nothing. No warmth, no anger, just curiosity. He ordered for both of us, remembered I liked oat milk lattes, small detail, but it registered. We sat down and he started talking. "I've been in therapy for a year now. My wife insisted after she saw how the family treated you at your birthday. She said if I didn't address it, she couldn't respect me. And she was right." "Go on." "I've realized our family is toxic. Like, clinically toxic. The favoritism, the scapegoating, the way mom and dad enabled Victoria's cruelty, it's not normal. And I participated in it. I stood by and let it happen because it was easier than standing up to them. You were right to cut us off, Catherine. You were right about everything." "What do you want from me?" "I want a relationship with you. A real one. Not the superficial family obligation thing we had before. But I understand if that's not possible." "I don't know if it is. You hurt me. You all hurt me. And I'm still processing that. I know. And I'm not asking you to forgive me or trust me right away. I'm just asking if you'd be willing to try. Slowly. On your terms." I thought about it. Took a sip of my latte. "Maybe. But I need you to understand something. I'm not the same person I was. I don't bend anymore. I don't make myself smaller to make other people comfortable. And I don't tolerate disrespect from anyone, family or not. I wouldn't want you to be any other way." We started slowly. Coffee once a month. Brief texts to check in.
He respected my boundaries, didn't push for more, didn't ask about reconciling with the rest of the family, just showed up consistently and tried to build something new.
His wife, Emma, was lovely. She reached out separately to apologize for not speaking up at the birthday dinner. She said she'd been shocked into silence, but regretted not defending me. I appreciated that. Over time, Nathan and Emma became part of my chosen family, not because we shared DNA, but because they showed up, because they acknowledged the harm, because they did the work to be better. That's what real family does. Meanwhile, Victoria's downfall was progressing. Nathan would occasionally mention things, not gossip, just facts. Gregory was under investigation for securities fraud. Victoria had applied for food stamps. Brooklyn was working 2 jobs to pay for community college. My parents had burned through their retirement savings helping them, and now had nothing. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt sad. Not for them specifically, but for the waste of it all. They'd had everything: money, status, opportunity, and they'd squandered it through arrogance and poor choices. They'd treated me like I was worthless while I was building something sustainable, and now our positions had reversed. 3 years after my birthday, Jessica threw me a small party. Nothing like the disaster at Marcello's. Just 10 close friends at her apartment. Wine, cheese, laughter. Simple and perfect. During the evening, she pulled me aside. "Do you realize how far you've come? Not just career-wise, but emotionally. You're not the same person who let your family walk all over you." "I feel different." "You are different. You're confident now. You take up space. You don't apologize for existing. It's beautiful to watch." That meant more to me than she knew, because she was right. I had changed. I'd stopped performing, stopped trying to be palatable, stopped shrinking myself to make others comfortable. I'd become fully myself, loud, opinionated, successful, unashamed. The version of me my family had spent 35 years trying to suppress. 4 years after the birthday incident, I got promoted again, this time to Chief Marketing Officer. C-suite, corner office, stock options that would be worth millions if the company went public, which it was planning to. My salary was $390,000 a year, plus bonuses, plus benefits. I'd gone from a struggling college grad making $32,000 to a C-level executive making nearly $500,000. I'd done it entirely on my own. No family money, no connections, no shortcuts. Just hard work and talent and refusing to accept less than I deserved. The day I got the promotion, Marcus took me to the same restaurant where we'd had our first date. Fancy place, tasting menu, the works. During dessert, he said, "I'm so proud of you." "Thank you." "No, I mean it. What you've accomplished, despite everything you've been through, it's extraordinary. You're extraordinary." I felt tears prick my eyes. For most of my life, I'd wanted to hear those words from my father, from my mother, from Victoria. I'd wanted them to be proud of me, to acknowledge my accomplishments, to see me, and they never had. But Marcus saw me. Jessica saw me. Nathan and Emma saw me. My chosen family saw me. And that was enough. 5 years after the birthday disaster, Brooklyn's apology letter arrived. I'd already told you about that, but what I didn't mention was my response, or lack thereof. I thought about responding, thought about writing back and saying I accepted her apology, but I didn't. Not because I was still angry, but because I didn't owe her closure. She'd sent that letter for herself, to ease her guilt, to feel like she'd done the right thing, and that was fine. She could have that. But I didn't need to participate in her redemption arc. My healing wasn't dependent on forgiving her. Some people think forgiveness is necessary for moving on. Dr. Morrison had a different take.
Forgiveness is optional. What's necessary is releasing the power they have over you, deciding that what they did no longer defines you. You don't have to forgive someone to be free of them. I'd released them, all of them. They no longer had power over me. Their opinions didn't matter. Their presence or absence didn't affect my peace. I'd built a life so full and beautiful that they'd become irrelevant. 6 years after the birthday, Marcus and I started trying for a baby. It took a year, several rounds of IVF, and more emotional exhaustion than I'd expected. But finally, I got pregnant. When I told Marcus, he cried. When I told Jessica, she screamed. When I told Nathan, he said he couldn't wait to be an uncle. I thought about telling my parents, about reaching out after all these years to share the news that they were going to be grandparents, but I didn't, because this baby was mine. This family I was creating was mine, and I didn't want their energy anywhere near it. Our daughter was born on a Tuesday morning in April, 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Perfect. We named her Elena. She had Marcus's eyes and my determination, apparently based on how stubbornly she refused to sleep through the night. Holding her in the hospital, looking down at her tiny face, I made a promise. I would never make her earn my love. I would never compare her to anyone. I would never make her feel like she wasn't enough. She would know every single day of her life that she was wanted, that she was valued, that she was enough exactly as she was. Nathan and Emma came to visit in the hospital, brought flowers and a teddy bear and genuine joy. Nathan held Elena carefully, like she was made of glass. "She's perfect, Catherine. You're going to be an amazing mom." "Thank you." "I mean it. You're going to break the cycle. You're going to give her everything we didn't have. That's the plan." When Elena was 3 months old, I got a card in the mail from my mother. "Congratulations on the baby. I heard from Nathan that you had a girl. I'd love to meet my granddaughter someday, if you're ever ready." I showed it to Marcus. "What do you think? What do you want to do?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to say no, to keep Elena away from all of that toxicity, but part of me wonders if I'm being unfair, keeping her from her biological family." Marcus sat down next to me, careful not to wake the baby sleeping in my arms. "Elena's biological family is you and me. Everyone else is optional. If you want to let them meet her, that's your choice. But don't do it out of obligation. Don't do it because you think you should. Do it only if you actually want to." I thought about it for weeks. Finally decided to respond. Sent a brief email. "Thank you for the card. I'm not ready to reintroduce you into my life yet. If that changes in the future, I'll reach out. Please respect my boundary." Her response came the same day. "I understand. I'm here when you're ready." 7 years after the birthday incident, I was sitting in my backyard watching Elena play in her little pool. She was 2 years old, fearless and funny, and so full of life. Marcus was grilling. Nathan and Emma were visiting with their new baby, a boy named Jack. Jessica and her husband were there, a few other close friends. It was a perfect summer afternoon. Simple, peaceful, full of people I loved who loved me back. I thought about that birthday dinner 7 years ago, the wine, the humiliation, the pain, and I felt grateful for it. Grateful because it had forced me to make a choice, to finally draw a line, to finally value myself enough to walk away. If Brooklyn hadn't thrown that wine, if my family hadn't walked out, I might have kept tolerating it, kept shrinking myself, kept accepting crumbs and calling it love. But they'd shown me exactly who they were, and I'd finally believed them. Everything good in my life had come after that moment. The promotion, the marriage, the house, the baby, the peace. All of it had only been possible because I'd walked away from people who didn't deserve me.
Later that evening, after everyone had left and Elena was asleep and Marcus was doing dishes,
I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. I hadn't thought about my family in months, hadn't checked on them or wondered how they were doing, but something made me curious. I opened Facebook and searched for Victoria. Her profile was public. I scrolled through her recent posts, photos of her at her retail job, trying to make it look aspirational, posts about gratitude and humility and lessons learned. Comments from her wealthy former friends were sparse. She'd been forgotten by the social circle she'd valued so much. Brooklyn's profile showed a young woman working hard, going to school, posting inspiring quotes about growth and change. She looked different, less entitled, more grounded. Maybe she really had changed. Maybe the consequences had taught her something. My parents' profiles were quiet. Few posts, photos of them at Nathan's house with baby Jack. They looked old, tired. I felt nothing looking at these profiles. No satisfaction, no anger, no sadness, just a distant curiosity, like looking at strangers' lives. They'd become strangers, people I used to know, people who no longer mattered. I closed the laptop and went to check on Alina. She was sleeping peacefully, her little chest rising and falling. I stood in her doorway and watched her for a long moment. This was my family now. This little girl. Marcus, Nathan and Emma and Jack, Jessica and her husband, the friends who showed up, the people who chose me. This was everything that mattered. 8 years after the birthday dinner, I was at a work conference when I ran into someone from my past. Gregory's sister, Amanda. I hadn't seen her since before the collapse. She recognized me immediately. Catherine. Hi, Amanda. Can we talk for a minute? Sure. We found a quiet corner. She looked uncomfortable. I wanted to apologize for my brother, for everything he put your sister through, and for how our family treated you. We knew it was wrong, but no one said anything. I appreciate that. How is he? Gregory? He's okay. Working a normal job now. He and Victoria are still together, somehow. They're trying to rebuild. That's good. Is it? That they're trying? Yes, I think so. Amanda hesitated. Victoria talks about you sometimes, about how you had it figured out all along, how you built everything yourself while she was relying on someone else's money. She regrets a lot. I'm sure she does. Do you think you'll ever forgive her? I don't know. Maybe someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I can forgive her and still choose not to have her in my life. I understand. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Walking away. Sometimes that's the only option. We parted ways. I didn't think about the conversation much after that. It was just another piece of the past, another reminder of how far I'd come. 9 years after the birthday incident, Alina started preschool. On her first day, Marcus and I walked her to her classroom. She was nervous, but excited, held my hand tightly until she saw the toys and the other kids. Then she let go and ran toward them without looking back. That's how it should be, I thought. Kids should feel safe enough to let go, confident enough to explore, loved enough to know you'll always be there when they need you. As we walked back to the car, Marcus said, "You're amazing, you know that?" Why? Because you're breaking generational trauma. You're giving Alina everything you didn't have, and you're doing it naturally, like it's easy. It's not easy. I know, but you make it look easy.
That night, after Elena was asleep, I sat down and wrote something I'd been thinking about for a while. A letter to my younger self, the one who'd spent 35 years trying to be good enough, who'd bent herself into shapes to fit into spaces that were never meant for her, who'd accepted less because she didn't know she deserved more. Dear Catherine, the letter began, right now you're trying so hard, working so hard, achieving so much, trying to earn love from people who will never give it freely. And I need you to know something. It's not your fault. The way they treat you isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their capacity to love, which is limited, conditional, broken. You're going to spend years thinking you're not enough. Not pretty enough, not charming enough, not successful enough. But the truth is, you're more than enough. You've always been enough. They just couldn't see it. One day, something is going to happen that forces you to choose. Choose between continuing to accept crumbs or walking away completely. When that moment comes, be brave. Choose yourself. Walk away. Build something new. Because on the other side of that choice is everything you've ever wanted. Peace, love, success, family that actually shows up. A life that reflects your worth. It won't be easy. You'll grieve, you'll doubt yourself, you'll wonder if you made the right choice. But trust me, you did. You will. The people who truly love you will remain. The people who don't will reveal themselves. And you'll finally be free to become who you were always meant to be. Strong, confident, unapologetic, whole. I'm so proud of you for surviving, for persevering, for finally choosing yourself. You deserved better, and eventually, you'll give yourself better. Love, your future self. I saved the letter in a file on my laptop. Maybe someday I'd share it with Elena, when she was old enough to understand, when she faced her own challenges and needed to know that walking away from toxicity was not only okay, but sometimes necessary. 10 years after my birthday, I was invited to speak at a women's leadership conference. They wanted me to talk about my career trajectory, how I'd climbed from entry level to C-suite. I agreed. But when I started writing my speech, I realized I couldn't talk about my professional success without talking about my personal journey, because they were intertwined. I couldn't become the leader I was meant to be until I'd walked away from people who wanted me to stay small. The speech ended up being about more than marketing strategies and career advancement. It was about self-worth, about boundaries, about the courage it takes to walk away from family when family becomes toxic. After the speech, dozens of women came up to me, crying, thanking me, sharing their own stories of family estrangement, of walking away from parents who didn't value them, from siblings who treated them poorly, from entire family systems that were built on dysfunction. One woman, probably in her 50s, grabbed my hand and said, "I've been estranged from my mother for 15 years, and I still sometimes wonder if I made the right choice. Hearing you talk about it, hearing you say you've never regretted it, that gave me permission to stop doubting myself. Thank you." That's when I realized my story mattered, not just to me, but to all the people who'd been told that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water, that you have to forgive and forget and keep trying. Because sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is build a new family from scratch. 11 years after the birthday incident, Brooklyn reached out again, this time on LinkedIn. A professional message. Appropriate. Respectful. She said she'd graduated from community college with honors, had transferred to a state university,
was studying psychology because she wanted to understand family dynamics and help others break cycles of dysfunction. She said she'd used her experience, her mistakes, as motivation to become better. She didn't ask for anything, didn't ask to meet, just wanted me to know she was trying. This time, I responded, briefly, professionally. Congratulations on your graduation and your continued growth. I wish you well in your studies. That was it. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just acknowledgement.
Because I could acknowledge her growth without inviting her back into my life. I could wish her well without trusting her. I could recognize her efforts without forgetting what she'd done. That's the nuance people don't talk about enough. Healing doesn't have to include reconciliation. Growth doesn't require forgiveness. You can move on without ever going back. 12 years after my birthday, I was sitting in a board meeting when someone asked me about work-life balance. How do you do it all? You have a young daughter, a demanding career, and you seem so together. How do you manage? I thought about that question, really thought about it. The truth is, I said, I don't do it all. I do what matters and let go of what doesn't. I stopped trying to maintain relationships that drain me. I stopped showing up for people who never showed up for me. I stopped performing. And that freed up so much energy for the things and people that actually matter. The room was quiet. Then one of the board members, an older woman who'd been in business for 40 years, smiled. That's the secret no one wants to say out loud. Success isn't about doing more, it's about doing less of what doesn't serve you. Exactly. That evening, I told Marcus about the exchange. He laughed. You've come so far from the woman who used to overextend herself trying to make everyone happy. I know. Sometimes I don't even recognize who I used to be. That woman who lent money she couldn't afford to lose, who drove hours to attend events where she wasn't wanted, who apologized for taking up space. She's gone. Good riddance. We sat on the couch, Elena between us, watching a Disney movie for the 100th time. This was enough. This was everything. 13 years after the birthday disaster, I got a call from Nathan. Dad's in the hospital. Heart attack. He's stable, but it was serious. Okay. Mom wants to know if you'll come. I don't think so. Catherine, he almost died, and I'm sorry that happened, but it doesn't change anything between us. You can't still be holding on to what happened at your birthday. It's been 13 years. It's not about the birthday, it's about a lifetime. The birthday was just the moment I finally saw it clearly. Nathan sighed. Will you at least think about it? I'll think about it. I hung up and sat with it. My father had almost died. Part of me felt something. Not grief exactly, but a complicated sadness. Sadness for what could have been, for the relationship we might have had if he'd been different, if he'd seen me, if he'd valued me. But he hadn't, and a heart attack didn't erase 35 years of harm. I didn't go to the hospital. I sent flowers. A card that said, wishing you a full recovery. That was all I could offer. Nathan called a few days later. He's asking for you. I'm sure he is. Catherine, please. What do you want me to say, Nathan? That I forgive him? That we're going to have some deathbed reconciliation where everything is magically okay? That's not real life. I know. But don't you want closure? I have closure. I got it 13 years ago, when I walked away. I don't need his apology or his blessing or his acknowledgement. I've built a life I'm proud of without any of that. If he wants to see me, tell him I wish him well, but I'm not coming. We hung up. I felt nothing. No guilt, no regret, just certainty that I'd made the right choice. Marcus found me in the kitchen. You okay? I'm fine. You sure? Because your dad almost died and you seem pretty unmoved by it. I am unmoved by it.
Does that make me a bad person? No. It makes you someone who's protected your peace. Some people don't understand that sometimes the healthiest response to family drama is no response at all. Exactly. 14 years after the birthday incident, Victoria reached out. Not through email or social media, but through a handwritten letter. Long, detailed, honest in a way I'd never seen from her before. She talked about hitting rock bottom, about realizing that everything she'd valued, money, status, appearances, was meaningless, about finally understanding how badly she'd treated me, how she'd enabled Brooklyn's cruelty, how she'd participated in my parents' favoritism, how she'd failed me as a sister. The letter ended with, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a relationship. I just need you to know that I see it now. All of it. And I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry." I read the letter twice. Then I put it in a box with Brooklyn's letter and Amanda's apology and all the other pieces of the past. I didn't respond. Not because I was punishing her, but because there was nothing to say. Her apology didn't change what had happened, didn't erase the harm, didn't create an obligation for me to absolve her. She'd done what she needed to do for her healing, and I'd already done what I needed to do for mine. 15 years after my birthday, Elena was 10 years old. Smart, kind, confident. She knew about my family situation. Not all the details, but the broad strokes. She knew I didn't talk to my parents or my sister. She knew it was because they'd treated me poorly for a long time. She knew family was about love and respect, not just biology. One day, she asked, "Do you ever miss them?" Sometimes. I miss the idea of them, the family I wish I'd had, but I don't miss who they actually were. That makes sense. Do you think you'll ever talk to them again? I don't know. Maybe, but probably not. And that's okay. She nodded, processing. "I'm glad you're my mom. I'm glad I'm your mom too, baby, because you would never do what they did. You would never make me feel like I wasn't enough. Never. You are enough. You are more than enough, just as you are." She hugged me, tight, and I felt it. The cycle was broken. Alina would never know what it felt like to earn love, to beg for validation from people who'd already decided she wasn't worth it. She would grow up knowing she was valued, wanted, enough, and that was everything. Now, 16 years after that birthday dinner, I can say with complete certainty, I won. Not because my family lost their money or status or comfort, not because they apologized or suffered consequences or learned lessons, but because I built a life so fulfilling, so rich with real love and real connection, that their presence or absence became irrelevant. They'd called me cheap. They'd humiliated me. They'd abandoned me. And in doing so, they'd freed me to become who I was always meant to be, strong, successful, unshakable, a woman who knew her worth and refused to accept less, a mother who broke generational trauma, a leader who used her story to help others, a person who chose peace over performance. Some people spend their whole lives trying to fix relationships that can't be fixed, trying to earn love from people who've already decided they're not worth it. I did that for 35 years, and then I stopped. That birthday dinner, as humiliating and painful as it was, had been a gift. It had shown me exactly who these people were, and it had given me permission to walk away. Brooklyn throwing that wine and saying I looked cheap wasn't the real insult. The real insult was my family's response, their silence, their departure, their expectation that I should apologize for being humiliated. That told me everything I needed to know. So I took my life back, built something better, surrounded myself with people who valued me, and I never looked back. Now, sitting in my beautiful home with my husband and daughter, talking about my estrangement like it was just a fact of life rather than a wound, I realized something. I'd proven them wrong in every possible way. They'd said I was worthless. I'd built a multi-million-dollar career. They'd said I was cheap. I'd created a life of abundance and generosity. They'd said I wasn't real family. I'd built a family so strong and loving, it put theirs to shame. They'd tried to break me. And instead, I'd become unbreakable. That was the best revenge of all. Not making them suffer, but becoming so successful, so happy, so completely at peace that their opinions no longer mattered. They'd lost their power over me, and I'd gained everything. That's how you win. Not by destroying your enemies, but by building a life so beautiful, they become irrelevant. And that's exactly what I did.